Hello and welcome along to Mondo Chelloveck Movies. My name is John, and this video is going to be what I watched in the month of December 2022. I mean, that seems like so last year. So first, me and the Debs watched Right and Wrongs, or Above the Law. The cut that we watched in this movie has got 3 different cuts in it. And I remember seeing Above the Law way back when. And I was saying to Deborah, I said, look, I've got this movie. I actually bought it on a day and we watched it the same day I bought it, which is strange for us. And I said, I know you're a fan of You and Bew, but I know you haven't seen anything to do with Cynthia Rothrock. So she said, right, we're going to put that right now and we'll watch the movie, and we had a great time with it. So I couldn't remember a whole lot of this movie. I do remember Cynthia Rothrock with a distinctive look. And we had a blast, and Deborah really enjoys this type of movie, as you know. It's funny that I keep saying to her, do you want to watch this movie? And she says, what's it about? And I says, well, it's got kung fu in it. So she says, oh, has it got people flying through the air and doing crazy things? I said, oh, yes. And she says, right, I'm watching that. The presentation on this movie is absolutely spectacular. It's a great set. It's still available, and there's a special features on it. So, yeah, we had a great time with it. And I do want to go back and watch the other cuts of this movie because I do think they're quite different in their tone. So that's Right and Wrongs, or Above the Law. Then we watched Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic the Hedgehog 2. We watched Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on Sky Movies, and I watched this one on Blu-ray. I am going to get the pair of them on a 4K because I think they just look amazing. Even the Blu-ray looks good. Now this I had to talk Deborah. I had to say to Deborah, look, are you going to watch this movie? No, I don't want to watch that. What would I want to watch that for? And I says, well, because it's good, it's funny. No, I'm not going to have anything to do with it. But anyway, I talked her into it. I bought this cheap and just said, look, there it is. Let's look at it, because I couldn't find it on Sky Movies. But anyway, so yes, so she put this on, and then she wanted to watch the second one immediately. So I watched that and we had a great time with it. She thoroughly enjoyed it, as I did. I hadn't seen part 2 until we watched this one together. And we just had a blast with it. It's just a fun movie. It's one of those movies that's really carried by Jim Carrey. I think the other cast are great. The Sonic the Hedgehog, the character is great. I just think the movie is absolutely brilliant. It looks spectacular as well. Can't wait to get them on 4K. Just for a bit of a fun movie to put on, to just have a bit of a laugh at, I highly recommend Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2. So, that's Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2. Another movie I picked up from HMV and watched it straight away is Eating Raul. Now, I had seen this one way back when on VHS. And this movie here, it's not for everybody. I would liken it to a John Waters movie. It's made by Paul Bartel, and I remember thinking I quite enjoyed this. I couldn't remember why I enjoyed it. I just remember thinking that I had to see this again when it came out. I used to go looking for this quite a lot of times. It was really sort of like massively out of print, but then Criterion picked it up. Now the quality on here is, as you would expect from Criterion, it just looks fantastic. There's a lot of special features on there, a lot of movies that are old movies by Paul Bartel. He's a hard person to actually buy stuff off. Then I went to Amazon Prime, and I watched 2 of his movies, which I'll talk about in a moment. This movie here, it's great. It's absolutely brilliant. I was hoping that it would be good. And you know, you get these movies and you have some nostalgia for when you put them on, you think, wow, that was just not what I thought it was going to be. This is from 1982, and Paul Bartel stars with a companion that he has in his movies called Mary Warrenoff. And it's just a really simple story where Paul Bartel and Mary, they want to get a restaurant, and that's all they want to do. They haven't got any money, so they have a unique scheme where they can put this advertisement in a newspaper and a Lonely Hearts, and when the person comes, they use the girl as a catfish, and the people come to this rendezvous, and they kill him with a frying pan. And what they do is, somebody else called Raul knows about this, and he's good at disposing of bodies. So yes, it's a very dark comedy, and a lot of things go wrong or do they, and it's just such a bizarre movie. But it reminds me a lot of John Waters because it's in extreme bad taste. There's a lot of bad taste things in here. There's actually quite a lot of really respected actors in this movie as well from time to time. But I had a great time with this movie, and on the strength of that, I did go to Amazon Prime and I looked for Death Race 2000, which was told about by my good friend Michael Witchy, BogeyCATproductions, linked down to his channel down below. And he told me that movie was on there because it's massively out of print in the UK. And the picture quality in it is stunning. Now, Death Race 2000 is a movie from 1975 that a lot of people think it's going to be another movie, but it's not. It's more like a satirical look at dystopian future. Probably one of the first ones that did that. I think it's a brilliant film, but I must admit when I first saw it, I was expecting something totally different, like a really out-and-out chase movie, which it is at times, but it's more of a critique on the sort of times. It reminds me a lot like Rollerball. The sort of themes of Rollerball is in this Death Race 2000, made in the same time. But I love Death Race 2000. It's got to get if it can get a good 4K, because of Blu-ray quality. Well, I'm saying the Blu-ray quality. The quality on Amazon Prime looks stunning. And then another one that I look for some more of his movies, and I had Lust in the Dust on there from 1982. So I thought, I've got to see that one. And when it was 1985. And that equally is one of those movies I have seen years ago. Can't remember anything about it. It's like it's a Western, to be honest. It's a comedy. It's a lot of things. It's got Divine in it. I'm a big fan of Divine. And the basic premise of that is that Divine is this person who gets kind of taken in by this gunslinger who's trying to go to this. They're going to this town, and in this town there's a lot of gold, and they're all trying. All this community is trying to get this gold and trying to find this gold. So that's the movie. They're trying to get this gold, and they're trying to. Does people stab each other in the back? Yes, of course they do. So yeah, so highly recommended if you can see it. I mean, I got this in the 2 for £20, and this was a no-brainer to pick this one up. I've been looking at it for a long time, waiting for it to go on a sale. So that's Eating Raoul, Death Race 2000, and Lust in the Dust. Next up, I watched The Cabinet of Dr Kalagori on 4K. This is the recently released special edition from Eureka. The only problem with this one, it doesn't have HDR on it, which I think could have made this movie look a little bit better, but it does look really nice. For the most part, because they're using different elements. Some of the elements aren't the real negatives, and some of them are a little bit down the line, but the general quality on here is sensational for me. Better than the Blu-ray, but if it had HDR, it would be a lot better than the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray, actually, the 4K remastered Blu-ray still looks really good. So this movie is a funny movie because it's made in 1920, can you believe it? Actually, some people credit it as 1919, can you imagine that? It's probably one of the first ever horror films ever, in a way, in a fashion. It's more like a psychological movie. It's like a movie that I've never seen before or after. The thing I find about this movie is the fact that when you watch it, now I've watched it a couple of times and saw it a certain way. When I watched it the time before this, I saw this ending which I thought, wow, I can't really remember that ending being like that. Now when I watched it this time on the 4K, I thought, right, knowing full well where I know this ending is in this movie, do I see other things in this movie that point to that ending? Now, when I was scrutinising the movie on this watch, I did see something at the start of the movie which made me think, hang on a minute, does that forebode the ending? Now, when I got to the ending, I didn't think it did, but when I was watching it, it made me think of the movie a different way. Now, that means, really, in the two watches in quick succession, I have watched this movie and had two different experiences with it. The fact that this movie can kind of go in those kind of misdirections, or even change the rule book a little bit and do some strangeness with the ending, and is the ending what it is? Now that's clever for any movie. Now a movie from 1920, over 100 years ago, to do that. I mean, I can't really wait to watch this again on this movie when I thought, well, I saw something different at the ending, I saw something different at the starting. Now with those two bits of knowledge, do I next go to the movie with a fresh view and see something else? I don't know. And I did look at on this line and just say, is this just me being a bit stupid? And a lot of people do say that this movie is one of these movies that can really do that. That is a part of the movie, the fact that it's got these strange elements in that made you see things in a different way. So, going on that, I can't recommend this highly enough. Shame about the HDR missing, but it is what it is. So, highly recommended, and it's a great watch and a great movie. That's The Cabinet of Dr Kalagori. Next I watched Pulp Fiction on 4K. This is the best 4K I've seen this month. It's absolutely mind-bending how good this movie is. It just looks spectacular. I thought it was going to look good, but I didn't think it was going to look this good. And apparently Reservoir Dogs looks even better. So yeah, so it's funny, when I watched this one, I've seen this movie quite a few times. I haven't watched it for quite a while. But when I watched it, I thought to myself, you know what it is? I'm seeing more comedy in this movie than I've seen before. It wasn't like a fresh watch for me, but I did find that a lot of the movies that I thought was quite serious in a way, I found it quite humorous. a lot more humorous than I remember. I know there's a bit of comedy in it, but to me I found a lot of the situations very comedic. But this movie is a classic, one of Tarantino's best, if not his best. It's not my favourite, but it's the best sort of like accomplished movie of his. And the 4K on here looks absolutely stunning. So I highly recommend it if you want to know something that's going to test your 4K system out. Look no further. That's Pulp Fiction. Next I watched Blackthorn on the recommendation of Keith from Euphoria Pictures, linked down below. And I didn't know what I was going to expect with this movie. But the thing with this movie is that it was written, I think it was it directed by Stephen King's son, or written by Stephen King's son? And you can tell actually, because these movies, especially Stephen King movies, they're not so black and white. This has got a bit of a supernatural element in it, which I didn't really know was coming, but I thought it was quite good actually. And in fact, if it didn't have the supernatural element in it, it wouldn't really play the way it did. I think the movie looks spectacular. It's meant to be shot in 1978, I think, and it looks like it is shot in 1978. And Ethan Hawke is great as his character here. He's got a good character arc for me. And the people who are playing the kids in this movie, they're absolutely brilliant as well. I had a great time this movie. It's quite slow to start off with, but I don't mind that. Sometimes these movies, I can get away with slow movies these days, as long as they're not like 5 hours long. But I really enjoyed it, and I do recommend it as a movie, but do know it's kind of got supernatural elements in it, and also it's a bit of a slow watch at times, especially the start of it. But I think it builds up nicely. So that's Blackthorn. Next up, I had this movie on the shelf for quite a long time, and I've been getting it out from time to time and thinking I'll have a watch of that, and I've just never got around to it. But the other day I thought last month, I thought I'm definitely going to stick this on. So I watched Red Sonja on 4K. This movie is absolutely terrible, but I loved it. I'll tell you why. When I put it on, I thought, right, it's got a great picture quality on it here. I knew it had a great picture quality. That's one of the things that wanted me to get to see this movie. So I wouldn't say that Bridget Nielsen's a close personal friend of mine, but in 2009, when we went on holiday down at London, I did see her. Actually, I've got to say she was really nice to the people she saw. So, anyway, I got this movie, and obviously it's got Arnie in as well, so I thought, right, it's got a few boxes ticked. I remember seeing this back in the day, but I couldn't remember anything about it. I remember watching the Conan movies as well, and quite liked them. And I thought, yep, I'll get these ones. If Conan comes out, I'll get them ones as well. So I put it on. I was watching it, and then gradually and slowly, I realised I was watching something that was absolutely awful and garbage. And I tell you what, this kid here, he is officially the most annoying kid I've ever seen in a movie. Now, to be honest, it was getting towards like the half-hour mark, and I was thinking, I don't know if I can put up with this movie any longer. Like I say, the movie looks sensational, so that was keeping us going. But I just thought, where's Arnie? He was in it a little bit. The acting, the dialogue, this kid, just everything about it was awful. But after about, say, half an hour, 35 minutes, I did sort of think, well, you know what it is? If this is going to be one of the worst things I've seen, let's go with it, and let's treat it as one of those so bad it's good movies. And I tell you what, by the end of it, I was having such a blast with this movie. I think when I changed tack to think this is going to be it is kind of like what's meant to be a serious movie, but it's not, because it's just ludicrous. The whole premise of the movie is just absolute rubbish. But if you go into this movie knowing that you've got a bit of a turkey here, but a turkey in a good way, because Arnie is just, some of the things he comes out with is just insane. In fact, I've heard a story that Arnie has said, he says that this is the worst film he's ever made, and he said to his kids when they were younger, if you don't stop working your ticket, I'll put this movie on for you. That'll fettle you. So, this is what a strange movie. It's complete up to you. The picture quality is absolutely brilliant. The factor of it being awful is good for me. I will definitely watch this movie again. I would actually get Deborah into it, but I don't know if she would get the whole so bad it's good. But I can't recommend this movie highly enough on that terms. Don't go and think that I'm going to say to you, you're going to watch something spectacular or not. You're going to watch something horrendous, but horrendously bad, good, if that makes sense. So, kind of highly recommended. That's Red Sonja. Because last month in December there was this little thing going on, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called Christmas. We decided to watch on Christmas Eve National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which is our favourite Christmas movie. We had an absolute blast with it, as we do every time we watch this. I haven't watched it for quite a while actually. I will get the 4K of this, but this actually, the Blu-ray in here didn't look that good, if I'm honest. But anyway, this I know everything that happens on this movie. It's so funny. I just like the tone of it and everything about it. I think everyone who's probably watching this video will have probably seen this movie and probably feel the same, because a lot of people who are talking about this movie over Christmas were putting this high on the list, if not the favourite movie of the Christmas movie. So yeah, there's not much to be said about it apart from the fact we absolutely loved it, and I will be updating this to 4K. So that's National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Then me and Deborah watched Mortal Kombat. Now, this was a funny one because I didn't want to get this because I heard good things about it. And I thought, right, I want to get this. It was in 2 for £24, so it wasn't anything that was going to break the bank. And if I didn't like it, I'd get rid of it. So I said to Des, what about watching this one? She says, oh, it looks a bit violent. She says, what is it? And I says, right, Kung Fu movie. She says, right, I'll watch that with you. Wow. So basically what I'll do is I'll just say some awful horror films, a Kung Fu movie, I might get a watching it, not. So we had a great time with it. I've got to say the 4K on here is absolutely sensational. It's not as good as, it's really good. It's nearly as good as Pulp Fiction, but for me Pulp Fiction was a bit better because it was like an older movie, and you could tell it took the time with that one. I mean, this one was going to look good anyway, but wow. The movie itself, I find, I don't really know anything about the computer games. I don't think I've ever played them. I think my son played them a bit. But I had a good time with it, and I hope they do more of these. I will be definitely on board to watch some more of this story if it plays out the way it looks like it's going to play out. I think the action here was quite good. Like I say, the picture quality was like really, really good. Sometimes these movies that come from games usually end up being absolutely horrendous. This was pretty good actually. So kind of recommend it. I'll definitely get in a sale. It's not the best movie ever made, but we really enjoyed it. That's Mortal Kombat. So here's my top 3 recommendations in December 2022. And number 3 is a bit of a cheat. It's 2 movies. It's Terrifier 1 and 2. So Terrifier 1 is very short compared to the second one. And it's a great introduction to Art the Clown. And it's pretty gory. It goes to some extreme places. So I thought, well, if that's bad, what's Terrifier 2 going to be like? And to be honest, when I was watching Terrifier 2, I can safely say that Terrifier 2 is, if not one or if not the goriest movie I've ever seen. I can't believe some of the things that are shown in this movie. I don't think they'll ever make me throw up in the cinema, but I could understand how people would. I could understand people being that nauseated by what they see, because some of the stuff in here is relentless and it goes on for a long length of time. The fact that this has been released uncut with all the stuff in it is just unreal. So I can't recommend this highly enough as a horror film. It's a great movie, actually. It's quite funny, but the extreme measures that this Art the Clown goes to when he goes to town on people, I've never seen nothing like it. Never seen nothing like it in any film. When something happens, you think, all right, he's done whatever. Then he does something else, and then something else, and you think, surely he's done. No, he's doing something else. And it just, some of them, especially one scene, goes on for that length of time that you can't really, like, not take anymore, but you can't think, well, what else can you do? And there's also a young lad on here called Elliot Fulham. So I follow him on Instagram. I've followed him for a long time, actually. He always interviews rock stars or heavy metal stars, and he's got into films now, so good luck to him. Anyway, highly recommended if you can take it, if your stomach can take it. That's Terrifier 1 and Terrifier 2. At number 2 is Sunrise. This movie is from 1927, and it's a silent movie, obviously. Now, this movie features 2 cuts. It also has this cut called the movie tone cut, which is, what they've done is they have put some sound effects over the top of the music playing, so you can hear things like people opening doors or cars going past. It's quite good, actually, how they've done that. Now, that's what they were doing before they could actually do actual sound, lip sync, and record people that could record noises. So that's quite fascinating to know that this was coming. This was like the next state of the art before the talkies came. Now, this is actually Eureka's Masters of Cinema #1. So there you go. So this movie is regarded as one of the best movies ever made, and I've heard a lot of people talk great things about it. But what I thought of it was, I thought it was like a love story, and that's all it was. So I thought, well, it's not top me list. It's not something I would navigate to. It is directed by F.W. Murnau, who actually directed Nosferatu. So that says a lot. Now, he was actually unfortunately killed in a car accident around about this time or just after this one. He was going to like make good. So I put it on and I could see where it was going. It was kind of this kind of saga where there's a girl in it, Jeanette Gaynor, and she got an Oscar for this performance, which you can see. So she's got a husband, and the husband goes out and ploughs the fields, and that's quite a drab existence. But he's got a lady friend who now he's called the man or something, she's called the girl, and the lady friend is called the girl from the city. Now, what the girl from the city is going to do, she's trying to steal this fella, and she kind of knows there's something going on. And you think, right, that's a little bit of a love triangle. I think that was probably references the girl from the city. So I don't want to go into too many details about this. And the people who have seen it know what I'm going to say about this movie. That's not what it's really about. It kind of is what it's about, but it's not really what it's about. This movie kind of goes into an area which I never thought it would go into. I mean, I know it's a you, but I can honestly say when I was watching this movie in a certain part, I was on the edge of my seat in a bad way, thinking, I can't believe, don't go there, don't do this. And it kind of, well, did it or not. But this movie is such a great movie and it had me in kind of, I don't know how me feeling like you know when you go to a movie and you feel certain feelings and you think, oh, that's great, and you feel upset or you feel whatever. All the sort of feelings I felt in this movie were like really intense. A bit like when I watched The Man Who Laughs. That's another silent movie, and I couldn't watch it because it was that thrilling, the movie, that I was kind of thinking, I can't bear to see what happens in this movie. And this movie was exactly the same. So it goes from being something that you could class as just your average love movie or love triangle to something completely different. And I think that the performances from both actors in here, and even the girl from the city, is absolutely fantastic. But this movie it says it's one of the best movies ever made, and I will agree this is one of the best movies ever made. On paper it doesn't seem like much, but when you watch it you think, my god, this is something else. This is why silent movies for me is something that if I see a movie that's silent, I'll always check it out. Sometimes you check them out and they're absolutely amazing like this one. Sometimes they're just average or they're not really anything to do with anything. But I'm a big fan of this type of movies, and this movie here, I can't really describe too much about it, but know that when you put it on, you will see something that you probably haven't seen before if you just go with it. And it is one of those movies that does take you on a bit of a journey, and quite rightly it deserves all accolades it does. So highly, highly, highly recommended. That's Sunrise. So at number 1 for my most recommended movie of December 2022 is 1927's Wings. This movie, if you think of Top Gun Maverick as like the best movie ever to do with, aerial, all that type of thing, the combat, the people in planes, the people doing their own stunts in planes, this movie is basically the Top Gun Maverick of 1927. I have never seen anything so thrilling in all my life. This movie takes place in the First World War, and it's got a great cast. It's got Clara Bow there, who's was the it girl at the time. She was like the main star in the whole of Hollywood. And you get this fella, and you get another guy who's I think he's Charles Buddy Rogers, yes, and a fella called Richard Arlen. That's right. Now, and Gary Cooper. Now, the Gary Cooper scene in here is exceptional. That's all I can say about that. I don't want to say anything more about that. Anyway, and Gary Cooper, he's a young boy, well, a young man sort of thing, but he just looks so different, but like strikingly handsome at this point. And you'd think of him being like an old fella in High Noon and stuff like that, if he played in High Noon. I think he did. Now, this film, what it does is it tells about the story where the two guys go into war, and they sort of fight against the Germans. Now, and they're from USA, and they fight in aerial, in the RAF. Well, not the RAF, but the American version of that. Now, Clara Bow, there's a bit of a love triangle in this one, a very clever love triangle actually. I'll not explain it because it's better that you don't know what happens because of the dynamics of it all. But this movie is quite long actually, but it flew over for me. Now, one of the things about this is that these two fellas actually fly the planes for real. There's no camera tricks, obviously. It shows you actually how they did it, why they put the cameras and all that, and how they actually filmed this stuff about with these two guys. They had to go and take flying lessons. They had to be trained, obviously, and they do. And they don't do their own stunts if the plane crashes. Not their planes, but if the planes crash, it's not the actors doing it. It's the stuntman who actually broke his back when he was doing it. And then he was supposed to be in a cast for a year, and I think he was in there for about a week, and then he got back in the plane. This story is, like I say, with the fact that these people are in the planes. Now I remember looking at it and thinking, are they actually flying this plane? I thought it would be like a plane on the back of like a tow truck or something, and they could kind of shoot away, you could see the sky, but no, they're doing the whole thing. They're going all over the place. They're flying in Michael,
where's me ladders?
They're flying in flight formation, and it's an absolute thrill fest. Yeah, there's no talking in it, but I don't think it needs talking. The story plays out so well, you don't actually need to know what's being said, but you can kind of get what's being said for the whole thing. I'll tell you what, this gets you, like I say, you're frightened of this action. What's going to happen? You think, what's going to happen when they go into war, when they come back? The whole love triangle with Clara Bow. She's a great character in this. Actually, see more. It's not that they just go to war and she's left at home. Something else happens about that. She actually goes to war as well. Now this movie is so emotional. It's one of those ones where you think, well, it's going along. It's I'm on the edge of my seat. It's ticking all the boxes for me. I'm completely blown away by the acting, the performances, the story. But it's just such, you get everything in this movie, and I tell you what, it's hard. It's very emotional at times. I'd imagine you'll be able to see this on YouTube, actually, if you want to check it out. I do know, I think I'm right in saying that this movie was the biggest blockbuster of the time. I think this movie grossed millions and millions of dollars. It was sort of like the Avatar of the time, if you can imagine that. So it's just amazing to think that this movie has survived, and it's one of those ones where you think, yeah, everyone said it's good. But when you watch it, you think, wow, this is good, so I can't recommend this movie highly enough. Okay, so thanks for watching. You take care, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.